Pleased to be joined by Dr. Bryce Edwards. He is political commentator and also director of the Democracy Project. Bryce, kia ora, thank you for your time today.
Morning, Andrew.
It is, it's officially underway. It's just got a little bit more exciting. An appropriate amount of rah-rah at the weekend with the main political parties getting their official campaign launches underway. They bust in, party faithful, with making noises at the appropriate points. Lots of balloons in appropriate colours. It seems like the election is officially underway, Bryce.
Yes, so Labor launched their campaign on Saturday, and they came out with that quite substantial policy on sort of free universal dental care, but not quite. And then National on Sunday with their very slick campaign opening, not so much policy announced then, but they kind of looked, well, I thought it was quite Americanized. It was quite, just very slick. They looked like a very unified and a party ready for government, but without a lot of real, sort of substance, or anything particularly new. But as you say, it's the end of the phony campaign. It's the real campaign now. And I don't know if you saw the poll that came out yesterday. I know we shouldn't pay too much attention to polls, but just mention it along the way. The Roy Morgan poll came out, and it had National going down, so down a couple of points to 31, which is really not that impressive for a party of the opposition that looks like it might form the next government. But Labor down to 24 points, which is just astonishing for a party of government that was on 50% 3 years ago.
I mean, as you say, not taking too much on one poll, but I suppose the ACT, on the other hand, did very well in this poll. So in terms of a coalition partner, a National is still on the winning team, as it were.
Yeah, that's right. So you have to, under MMP, add together more than just the major parties. And so ACT on 18%. So I was just wowed by that, because that's only, 6 points behind Labor. So it's almost like ACT's a major party under this poll. We'll see. We'll have to wait and see. But it is the trajectory that ACT has been on, and David Seymour has had a very strong 3 years in Parliament, created a lot of waves, and one of the waves in the last month was his criticism, or his announcement, that he wanted to get rid of some of these government agencies that he felt aren't really doing much. The Ministry of Pacific Affairs was one of them, and he joked about sending in Guy Fawkes to get rid of them. And he got a lot of bad publicity on that. And I think there were a lot of commentators that were expecting that to hurt ACT, but I obviously it hasn't. I think
honestly,
a lot of people,
this is the guy that twerked on Dancing with the Stars in order to attract attention. I don't think, even racist jokes in public aren't necessarily, anything goes, it would seem.
So even when they're getting bad publicity, I think it's good publicity for David Seymour and ACT. But also we saw the Greens up. So they're really, they were up to just about 13%. So they're, really competing with Labor now. And New Zealand First up to 5.5%. So
exactly. I mean,
got to take them seriously.
This is, as we keep saying, this is just one poll. However, New Zealand First, consistent in the last few polls, is saying, hey, this isn't just a rumour, they're definitely a contender in this one, and certainly if the trajectory continues, New Zealand First is going to be part of the mix, whatever happens. Is this solid, or is it too early to say?
I think it's very solid, and they tend to do better in the last month of the campaign. And I don't know, some of my left-wing friends talk about maybe voting for New Zealand First, because they think it's over for this government, and they think it's going to be a right-wing conservative government. But they think our best hope on the left is to have a stronger New Zealand First that might be part of that government and a handbrake on those things. So
certainly experience of being a handbrake, and of course former Wellington Mayor throwing his hat into the ring as local New Zealand First candidate. That's an interesting move.
Yes, and Andy Foster, former mayor, and in fact my former economics teacher when I went to school, and form teacher. So I still run into Andy around the streets and say hi. And he made his fame on the Krypton factor, and I think a few other game shows. So he'll be an asset for New Zealand First, and I think he'll probably get into Parliament.
Hey, Some other interesting things about it. I mean, one of the things I'm encouraged by is we're actually starting to talk policy. We're having policy debates. Okay, yeah, some of them are a little bit theatrical, a little bit gladiatorial, but we're actually starting to talk about policy. There's been enough policy announcements to be able to do a bit of a comparison game, so good things happening there. In amongst all of that, though, protests and personal attacks is, look, is it a dirty campaign so far, or is this just people pointing out the problems in others, as always happens in an election campaign?
It's certainly getting a bit more colourful and a bit more aggressive. And we've had a few campaigns, particularly 2017, 2020, that weren't really characterized by such aggression. So, this does feel to me like a flashback to 2014. I don't know if you remember the Nikki Hager book came out,
Yes.
Dirty Politics. Then you had Kim.com. You had, all sorts of hijinks going on in that election. It's a bit like that again.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to have a bit of aggression in politics. People don't agree. So, and you got to have some aggressive campaigning as well. So I don't think there's anything wrong with, as we saw, the CTU ad campaign against Christopher Luxon. If you feel strongly and you're a trade union about a political party getting to power and you want to warn people against that, fair enough. But I did wonder whether their campaign in particular might have backfired. They didn't really have a lot to say, I thought, about what was wrong with Luxon, apart from him being out of touch. I mean, it's a bit of a reverse platitude, if you like. I mean, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So I sort of wonder whether these aggressive attacks
it got
really
Christopher
work.
Luxon on the front page of a number of national newspapers. I thought it was quite a good photo. And back to the David Seymour principle, not bad for the CTU to buy a front page ad with your photo on it in an election campaign. Any good publicity?
Exactly. So I don't think National will be too bothered by that, but it will be a shame if things do escalate a bit too much. And a bit of name calling is okay, but if it does get too personalized, toxic, like I've said before on this program, I think it can drive the public to kind of turn away in disgust, if it gets a bit too ugly. So it's a matter of finding that right sort of line between nice and naughty.
Exactly, just in time for Christmas. Hey, going to be an interesting campaign. Bryce, appreciate your commentary as always. Thanks so much for joining us today.